Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Star Wars, brought to us by JVC and Beam Software. Star Wars for the NES was actually the second game created for the 8-bit system, with the original being released only in Japan for the Famicom and was actually created by Namco. That game, however, is very strange and took a lot of liberties with the Star Wars license. So a few years later, in 1991, JVC and Beam Software teamed up to create this Star Wars game for the NES. So here we go with the original Star Wars. After that awesome opening that mimics, of course, the classic Star Wars opening, we're then going to be going to our title screen. Now, this game is, of course, based on A New Hope, Episode 4, and we're going to be doing what is considered a 100% run, where we rescue all the playable characters in the game. When we start off on Tatooine, it's kind of a more open map with a few areas to explore, though we will only be going to a handful of locations. There's a few that we won't be visiting, as they're not needed in order to save any of the characters. When we gain control of our speeder, we're going to automatically be going inside the first cave. Now, you can technically just choose to leave the cave if you want to, but this will be a good chance to familiarize yourself with the platforming controls. Start making your way over to the far right and you'll grab a blaster on the far right, and after leaving the cave, you'll now have control of the speeder. Head over to the left side of Tatooine and drive up into the upper left corner where the Sandcrawler awaits. Inside, of course, we're going to be battling some Jawas and saving R2-D2. Once inside, get used to the momentum of running, as you're going to make your way over to the far right side and climbing up the ladder. Wait for the blast to hit the wall and then climb up and take out the Jawa before heading over to the left, and then you're going to use this boost with the up arrows to head upwards. Take out the next Jawa. He'll usually jump up into the air to fire, so if you duck next to him, you'll be able to avoid his fire, and do the same after riding up the wall with the next Jawa that you end up running into. To the left, make a big leap over using the conveyor belts to help you out, and then when you make it up here, be careful not to get crushed, and do the same with the conveyor belt right above you, heading down the next ladder to the right. Once you're over here, you're going to have to deal with another couple of crushers on the conveyor belt. I usually duck here in order to speed my way through, and it'll help me get past this area a little bit quicker. Keep heading along the top portion to the right here, dropping down here to take out another Jawa, and you have to do a little jump over to this conveyor belt and then over to the far right corner where you're going to run into R2-D2. He informs us, of course, that he is property of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and now, of course, our goal is to find good old Ben, and we're going to do so by jumping back into our speeder and heading over to the right side here. It can be a little bit difficult to control this thing, trust me, and you're going to be wanting to avoid all of the enemies that are scattered throughout the main open land. Now, inside this cave is things get a little bit trickier. You're going to have some platforming you're going to have to worry about, and these big bugs that get really annoying. For the most part, I usually just run past and avoid them, trying to go faster than they are, and if they get on the same level as me, then I fire my blaster. Trying to take out each individual bug usually just ends up causing me some issues. Jump over to the right on the small platforms to drop down to the bigger platform, and then take the smaller platforms over to the left now once you're there, in order to safely run into good old Obi-Wan Kenobi. After the scene with Obi-Wan, we're now going to be heading to Mos Eisley. Head over to the left, watching out once again for some more enemies, and then head down to the lower portion of the map here on Tatooine. You'll see in the lower right here is kind of a little bit of an opening, and driving through here will take us to Mos Eisley. Now immediately we're going to switch off of the blaster weapon that we've been using and actually go over to the lightsaber. Start off by going inside of the cantina, of course one of the most iconic scenes from the film, and you don't actually have to go in here if you're not looking to do 100%, but of course if you don't go in here, you're not going to run into the man himself, Han Solo. Now unfortunately, it's still better to pretty much stick as Luke Skywalker, though I will play as Han for a little bit. He has a pretty fast blaster that can do a decent amount of damage to enemies, but he's not as fast as Luke, and Luke's lightsaber just tears through enemies, so even though Han's my favorite character, I'm not really going to be using him during the course of this run. After getting Han, though, you have to make your way back over to the far left of the cantina, watching out for the various Rodians and other aliens that are trying to take you out. Once back in the main open area of Mos Eisley, you're going to have some of these trooper guys set up, as well as some Jawas that are running around as well. Thankfully, you don't have to really take out any enemies, so if you're able to jump over and avoid them altogether, just do so. A little nice jump with some momentum will allow you to usually jump right over most hazards in your way. Once you get over and you'll find Hangar 99, climb up here and you'll have to do a big leap over to the left, so you can land right here and find Hangar number 94, which is where the Millennium Falcon is being stored. Once in here, do a big run and just keep jumping over all of the stormtroopers along the way. Climb up the ladder here, be careful of the laser that is shooting out of the wall, wait for it to dissipate of course before attempting to climb all the way up. Hit the up arrow and you want to go all the way to the very top, come out here and now go over to the right side. There are some shields here though that are worth collecting that are going to help you out with the Millennium Falcon. So if you see one of the shields laying there, little shield icons, be sure to pick them up because they will help you in the upcoming space segments. Once we make it to the very bottom though, we will find the Millennium Falcon and we take off from Tatooine. Now begins the first of the space shooter segments, and since we haven't picked up any of the shield items, we can't take any damage, but our strategy would remain the same. We're just gonna not try to get hit. This is easily one of the hardest parts, so that's why I recommend going around that hangar at bay and trying to find those shields if you can. Trying to get the judgment of exactly when to move and all can be a bit tricky. As long as one of the meteors doesn't come directly in the center of our panel, we won't end up getting hit by it. But if this is your first time playing it and you come in here with no shields, you're probably going to get taken out in just a second or two, so be very, very careful. Run around the hangar, find the extra little bits of shield. I actually passed one on my way to the Millennium Falcon, so there's a few of them there to kind of boost your health. The segment does seem to unfortunately go on forever, and since it's so nerve-wracking when we're so worried about taking even one hit of damage and we would end up dying here, it can definitely be tricky to not let the pressure get to you, but eventually you'll kick it into warp speed and blast into space. We have now arrived at the Death Star, and after leaving the Millennium Falcon, we're going to head over to the right. I really do like the backgrounds here showing the various ships that are hanging out in the hangar here. Head to the far right and take a couple of those boost up arrows up, just a little bit and then take the next one. You're going to go way up, but what you want to kind of do is you just want to take it a little bit and go into that little platform you can see to the left. So you kind of have to manipulate yourself so you can hit that one and then blast your way up here, take out another one of the stormtroopers and go through the next door. In this room, you'll notice some elevators. Ignore them for right this second, and you'll get sick of elevators, trust me, very soon. But instead, go inside the opening door where you'll find the computer outlet. After the short scene, you'll be automatically outside of the room. Head over to the far right and make a big leap over the gap and go inside this elevator. We're now in kind of a maze-like structure of going through elevator after elevator, so follow the path that I'm taking through each of the elevators in order to get where we need to go. Make a jump over to the left here and climb up. As soon as you get out of here, though, you're probably going to get hit by this guy. He's one of the hardest guys to try to avoid. Make some quick jumps over on the smaller platforms and then take the elevator, and you're going to go pretty far up. Once you're up here, make sure you make a nice safe leap over to the left side, and then another one all the way over further left into the next elevator. Once outside, you're immediately going right into the next elevator, and after popping out, there's one stormtrooper waiting for you, but you're just going to go right into the next one. Once we're up here, we're going to jump to the left, grab a shield, and go through another elevator. We're coming up to a boss encounter, though, that can be made really easy with a couple of steps. Make sure you have the lightsaber and Luke equipped. Jump up the ladder to the left here, and then immediately attack the device in the center of the tractor beam. You can see that it'll fall out, and it's destroyed, and that's the end of that fight. If you stay too long in that battle, it gets a lot harder with a whole bunch of lasers coming out, and a whole lot of other problems. But if you do so really quickly, as soon as you go in the room, climb up the ladder and smack it, the battle will be over in no time. Unfortunately, though, right afterwards is, well, more elevators, so I hope you've been having fun, and this whole segment is a little bit more tricky than the first one because there's a lot more elevators to choose from. After heading up to this portion and then going through this elevator, you're going to go way down, but once you do finally make your way out of the elevator, head over to the right, you're going to get another shield, and then go through the second door where we will find Princess Leia. Now, I will switch over to Leia for just a brief moment. She uses a blaster similar to Han, but it's not quite as powerful or fast. Now, for the next segment, this is a little bit tricky, so what you need to do is you're going to be running off this platform and falling with Leia. You're going to go way down. Now, normally there's fall damage, but if you fall here and just hug at the wall to the right, and just as you're about to get to the elevator itself, move to the center of where the elevator door is and hit up, and you should be able to go through the elevator without hitting the ground. And this is going to save you a boatload of time, and you won't have to deal with so many elevators. Once I get inside here, though, I'm going to switch back to Luke, because it's just so much easier to use him. We're going to use the momentum from this conveyor belt to launch ourselves all the way up into the air. If you're wondering about the other characters on the selection screen, Obi-Wan can actually bring characters who die back to life, C-3PO can give advice, and R2-D2 can actually heal your X-Wing later on. Continue following the path that I'm taking along a whole bunch of conveyor belts. You're going to have to make some big leaps over some spikes like I did right here, avoiding the droid and then dropping down. There's some crushers here, so you have very little room for error while trying to jump your way from platform to platform. Remember, momentum is the key, so hopefully by now you've practiced how the momentum works a little bit in the game so you can get the jumps that work the way you would like them to. Now, once you make it up here, you're going to be inside of the trash compactor, one of the most famous scenes from the original Star Wars. Stay on this platform over to the left and just wait. Eventually, the creature from within will pop out, and just swing your lightsaber and boom, the boss is instantly dead and we're outside of the area. You have a limited time for how long you can be in there, of course, as the trash is rising and you would end up dying, but if you just wait on that platform, you don't even have to move, the boss comes to you and you can easily take it out. Now, this segment is even tougher than the one we just dealt with, because there's even more spikes and even less room for error when trying to travel up the, up chutes, because if you go too far, you may end up landing in spikes, and you have to get just enough momentum to help yourself fly over a certain amount of spikes. So this is really tricky and takes a lot of practice to get better at. Over here, you're going to use a couple of these in a row, and you have to get out of them at just the right time so you don't land in some more spikes. Once up here, wait for the stormtroopers to come to you and take them out before then running down the small hallway. There's a giant robot here that we're just going to avoid by jumping over, head upwards, and we finally make it back to the Millennium Falcon where we can escape the Death Star. Now it's time for another one of the space battles, but thankfully we picked up some shields along the way during the course of the Death Star, so it will help us out. And we're not dealing with asteroids, we're dealing with TIE fighters now. You have an unlimited stream of turret that you're going to be able to use to help you out in order to take out the enemies. And you should have plenty of shield though in order to outlast these TIE fighters. Not only are you taking out the TIE fighters, but any projectile that they fire out, you're going to want to aim at them. The aiming takes, of course, a bit of getting used to for the timing. Usually I just keep letting it go and just move it around where I need to or where I think enemies are going to run into. There's a few key locations that you'll see that I kind of hang around, and these usually work rather well. A lot of times TIE fighters will just run straight into my line of fire. I do find this segment, regardless of having my shield or not, a bit easier than that first original Asteroid belt, because I feel like the hit detection is a little bit easier to tell if you're about to take a hit or not during the TIE fighter part. Now, just like with the other section, it's going to last pretty long. I'm not sure if it's based on the amount of TIE fighters you take out or just over a period of time does it finally end, but either way, eventually we finally get through it, we'll speed ahead in space and move on to the next part. After a pretty cool cutscene for the NES of seeing all the X-Wing pilots jump into their X-Wings and blast off, getting ready to head towards the Death Star, we move on to the next shooter sequence. You can see that since we're in an X-Wing, it's a little bit different of a setup, we have a different kind of gun, but the targeting and battling of the TIE fighters is pretty much identical. Your health, though, is located right above your control panel, instead of floating kind of the center of the top portion of the screen. The strategy, though, for this segment is the exact same as we had before. There are more TIE fighters, it seems like, during this segment, so it's a bit harder, but your goal is to kind of just aim up. You can kind of see where the TIE fighters are hanging out, the patterns that they usually end up taking. You can just keep on firing and just keep on moving around until you're able to take them out. Focus, of course, a lot on the blast individually. Like, if you can't seem to hit a particular TIE fighter, go, of course, and focus. Make sure that you're not accidentally getting hit by a stray bullet from one of them. I love the fact that they used a bright color, like a nice green color, so you're able to easily tell when something's flying towards you. After another pretty lengthy segment, we're then moving on now to the final level of the game, the Death Star Trench. And here we go, the final stage of the game, the Death Star Trench, and of course it's going to be pretty treacherous to get through. You're going to have TIE fighters coming at you from both in front and behind you. You have to manipulate your X-Wing back and forth through the little small areas, trying to do your best to avoid damage. If the X-Wings run into you, you'll take a bit of damage. You have two kinds of fire though. You have your normal gun you're going to be pressing with B, but then with the A button you're going to fire your proton torpedo, which is what you're going to need to fire at the very end. Here we go, we're at the very end of the segment. Make sure that you launch the torpedo so it ends up going inside of the exhaust port. You can sit back and enjoy the ending to Star Wars on the NES. So there you have it, Star Wars for the NES. You can see we have our final percent complete, 100%, with the end below it, and then the game will go back to the main title screen, and we can start the game all over again. While this is far from being an absolute perfect Star Wars game, and there are many other Star Wars games that do this much better, including of course the classic Super Star Wars series for the Super Nintendo, Star Wars on the NES has a lot of memories for me from when I was a child, and I still enjoy playing it every now and again today. But with that though, that will wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi movie-related video game, be sure to check out the one I did a few years ago for Stargate on the Super Nintendo. I also, of course, want to thank all the members of my Patreon. Without your continued monthly pledges, I wouldn't be able to keep doing what I'm doing. They keep the play-throughs, the reviews, and all the other content, the Bar Geeks, Snack Shack, and everything else I do amongst YouTube and Twitch TV and everywhere else. They keep it going, and you can help out as well. As little as $1 a month can keep this channel and all the channels going and growing and all kinds of new content. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoy Force Awakens if you're a Star Wars fan. May the Force be with you, and I hope you enjoyed.